Buenas noches, Ship Familia. Welcome back to the latinXfactor Sharpen Your Professional Edge program. I'm Dr. Dora Renaud, Senior Director of Academic Programs here at Ship National, and I will be your moderator this evening. This is our last show for the year, and of course, we saved the best for last with our special guests from USAA, who is playing a huge part of our national convention, which is less than 2 weeks away. We are so excited. USAA will be providing excellent professional development in our undergrad workshops, and they're also hiring 2021 interns in the career fair, so make sure you join us. Our expert panelists tonight are Yhanira Adán Martínez, Valeria Garza, and Marilyn Cordoba. Yhanira is a former SHPE member currently working in human resources at USAA. Marilyn Cordoba is the software architect for the deposits program at USAA in Plano, Texas, right down the street from me. And Valeria Garza is a software engineer at USAA, supporting the platform and architecture transformation of the enterprise's digital delivery channels for member communications. So tonight, the focus of the learning is on how to be your own champion. The idea of being a champion of something is truly believing in yourself, recognizing the value in yourself, and advocating for what you want. We will learn what a champion is and how to embrace it as a personal compass to guide your career. So this webinar will equip you with the knowledge and tools to become champions in the workplace. So happy to have you join us today. Yhanira, Valeria, Marilyn, welcome. How are you guys tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Doing great, thank you.
All right, let's get this show started.
And Dora, before we jump in, we did want to know who's in the audience with us today. So if you can please throw the first poll question to the group. We'd like to know who's participating in tonight's webinar. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we've got our first poll out there. So audience, please click on the one that represents you. And we have about 20% that have participated. 20, 30, 45, they're still coming. 60. And it's slowing down a little bit. So we're at 80. So we'll go ahead and close the polls. And let me share it. So tonight we have 35% of the participants are university students, 12% are graduate students, and 41% of the audience have 5 or more years in their career.
Awesome.
Great. Can you guys see the screen again?
Yes.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. And just really briefly, we appreciate you all spending the next hour of your day with us. After a brief welcome from Dora, the three of us are going to go through some brief introductions. We'll dive into the topic of how to be your own champion. And we do have reserved time at the end for Q&A, but if you would like to start sending those in along the way, please use your chat feature in the webinar and you can start sending those in. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just get started. My name is Yhanira Adán Martínez. I'm originally from Eagle Pass, Texas, which is a border town between Mexico and Eagle Pass. I am a first-generation Latina. My parents are from Zaragoza, Mexico, and I'm the youngest of 8. So the first 5 and my parents were born there. They immigrated to the States over 40 years ago, and I had the opportunity to kind of be raised here and there. I did my undergraduate studies at MIT, where I had the pleasure of being a SHPE member myself. I did attend a national SHPE conference in LA. I won't tell you guys the year just to not date myself, but it was through that conference that I landed an internship with Hewlett Packard in their IT department. And that took me from Texas to the East Coast and then the West Coast. My undergraduate studies, while initially I thought I wanted to be into computer science or computer engineering, after my first programming class, I realized that I needed a little more interaction with people. So I ended up studying business management with a concentration in IT. So and since then I've studied process engineering and other things. After my, a couple of years after my undergraduate studies and some work at Hewlett Packard, I took on a full-time job with them. And when they merged with Compaq, I moved back to Texas by way of Houston, Texas. And in an effort to get closer to the family, I eventually moved to San Antonio, which is where I'm now at. I've been with USAA for 13 years. And it was early during that time here at USAA that I got my MBA at UTSA. I love doing volunteer work. I am huge on helping out my fellow Latinos. Some of the pictures you'll see on the screen is the moment of graduation. You see my dad wearing a cowboy hat. Some of my other brothers were wearing cowboy hats as well. And as you can imagine, there's this huge garden where all the graduates are kind of coming down. And as I'm scanning the group to see where my family is sitting, there's like one section over there with a bunch of cowboy hats. And that was mi familia. The one on the top right is an opportunity that I had to speak at the Latina Style Symposium on a panel in DC back in 2016. On the bottom left, I'm addressing a group of Latino students, high school students from the Young Leadership Women Academy here in San Antonio. And in the center is my pride and joy, my husband and my 2 boys. I do have a 1-year-old and a 14-year-old who right now are outside of the house to try to keep it nice and quiet here with everyone working from home and schooling from home. And then one of the last things that I'll share with you all to kind of tie back to my passion for helping the Latinos advance through education is last year I had the opportunity through the support of my friends and my family to launch Proyecto Ayuda here in San Antonio, where we host an event for graduating seniors and their family 100% in Spanish so that parents can get more education regarding the process of applying for college and financing college. And then we also had the opportunity to award $13,000 worth of scholarships. And in about a month, we'll be doing it again for our 2nd year, and this time we'll be hosting the event virtually. So that's a little bit about me and who I am and the things that I love to do. And with that, I'm going to transition to Marilyn Cordoba.
Hey everyone, can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Hey everyone, my name is Marilyn Cordoba. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, so shout out to my Floridians out there. My parents immigrated to the United States back in the late 70s, and they are from Costa Rica. I am the youngest of 3 daughters. My sisters have inspiring careers. One is a biology professor in a university, and the other one is the branch chief for the U.S. Coast Guard Force Readiness Command. I know that's a lot. Growing up, we learned the power of perseverance, hard work, and dedication. It's actually what led me to pursue a bachelor's in computer engineering from Florida International University, which is where I went. It was in FIU that I was actually able to join and actively participate in SHPE and attend the national conference in Indianapolis back in 2013. I was able to interact with many companies, attend many sessions, and it was a really great experience for me. It was actually in that conference where I first saw the USAA booth. I was really nervous for weeks. But weeks later, I had several job offers, and the one that really stood out to me was USAA. It's the reason I packed up all my things, drove 21 hours to Dallas, Texas, and that's where my journey began. I felt really nervous to begin somewhere new where I didn't have a support system. My family doesn't live here. My family's all in Florida, and I was afraid of not being good enough. I joined the recruiting team at USAA for SHPE, and slowly but surely I began to believe in myself. I overcame that fear And once I did, I really thrived. I started as a developer primarily in Java in the space of banking and USAA. I moved into other programming languages as well throughout my career. I moved quite a bit in the banking space, and it actually allowed me to expand my horizons and really hone my craft. I decided to pursue a master's degree back when I was in 2 years within working for USAA in information technology with a focus in software development from AMU, which really helped me build my confidence in myself for sure. Fast forward now, I've been at USAA for 6 years. I've continued to learn and progress, and I am now the solutions engineer for the deposit space. So that's just a little bit about me. As you can see in the photos, the top left one, that's me and my family and my graduation back in Florida for my bachelor's degree. One of the things that I did shortly thereafter receiving my master's is it was my mom's 60th birthday. We actually all decided to make it a family trip to celebrate these 2 big accomplishments in our lives. And we went to Italy. It was a family trip. We loved it. That's actually a picture of the Coliseum. And the other photos, I've been very actively involved in recruiting at SHPE at USAA. So a lot of those events, those are the pictures for. And then last but not least, the photo on the right, that's my little pride and joy, the newest addition to the family. That's Olive, who's a golden doodle, and she's 4 months. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm really honored that I get to share my story with y'all today, and I hope it really resonates with many of y'all. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Valeria.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. Good evening, everybody. As Dora mentioned before, my name is Valeria Garza, and I'm a software engineer at USAA. I grew up in the San Antonio area, and I'm grateful to be very close to my parents and my 2 brothers. And honestly, their love and support through all these years from college to now has really made all the difference in making me who I am today and giving me the drive to, to do things like this, to succeed in the career that I would not have expected. So how did that come about? Well, I went to St. Mary's University. I loved it very much, and I studied industrial engineering there. I was really interested in that field because I said that's a really, really cool way to bridge engineering and business, because you're really looking at both sides of the picture. So I liked having, that perspective. So you might think, well, how did I end up in IT? And the long story short of that is that in high school, I took one computer science elective class my senior year, and I was really interested in it. I enjoyed coding, and I liked the challenge of problem solving. And after that, I took one freshman programming class in college. So those were actually really my only 2 experiences, but they were enough to get my curiosity piqued and having an interest in coding. So eventually in my junior year, that led me to apply to an internship at USAA. So I was a 2017 summer intern, and I can tell you, I was wondering, like, where am I? Like, what am I doing? Like, this is, there was a lot of things that were new to me, but as I'll mention a little bit more, I received a full-time offer later on, and my experiences there gave me enough courage to come back as a full-time developer. So now I've been there for about 2 years, and you can see there that bottom middle picture with the hackers team. That's our team's nickname. And suffice it to say, I've learned so much, and it's really amazing, and it's truly not an overstatement to know how far I've come from 2 or 3 years ago, where I didn't know anything about the technologies that I'm using to develop microservices, deploy to production, do testing and validation. It's honestly really cool. So as Dora mentioned, our team supports the digital delivery of all those member notifications we send out via email, SMS, and push. And through all that time, I've learned really valuable lessons in technical design strategies, collaboration with business owners and clients, and production support, and even innovation. That bottom left corner that you see is some of my teammates and I at a hackathon. And now I'm currently pursuing an MBA back at St. Mary's, very grateful to say. And in my personal time, I enjoy reading and music. In that bottom right corner picture, I was at a concert a couple of years ago with the San Antonio Symphony, so it was really cool. As far as SHPE goes, though, this is my first time involved through USAA, so I'm really happy to be here tonight. And St. Mary's has a SHPE chapter as well, so if anybody out there is in the audience, shout out to St. Mary's family, go Rattlers. And I'm really glad to be here with you. I hope that what I share from my experiences will provide some good food for thought, and that this will be a great evening for all of you. So now that you guys have learned a little bit about us, I'll hand it back over to Marilyn, who's going to help us explore what a champion is and discuss a recent study that highlights the importance of advocating for yourself and others in the workplace.
All right, so let's get started. When I think of the word champion, I think of competition, I think of strength, grit, resiliency, medals, awards, etc. Someone who truly excels at a given area or subject. That's who I would consider a champion. Now, what does that mean to be for yourself? How can you be your own cheerleader to push yourself to achieve your goals, to be successful in school, your job, and even in corporate America? Especially in situations where the people around you don't look like you, they may not understand where you're from, not understand your culture, and maybe you feel underrepresented, timid, or even shy. I can for sure relate to this. Growing up, I was really, really shy, really quiet and timid. Not sure if I've ever stopped being those things, but I firmly believe, and I still do today, I firmly believe that my work ethic and my hard work alone would be enough to speak for me. That it would showcase to my peers and upper management that I'm awesome, that I deserve that recognition, that I deserve that promotion. I realized that that's not always the case. I had to overcome what has become to known as the imposter syndrome. And for those who don't know what that means, it means the idea you gotta fake it till you make it, or that you're not good enough. I realized that no matter how hard you try, if you don't advocate for yourself and give yourself the opportunity to grow and harness your craft, that it would be a disservice to your goals. You know, like it says here on the slide, being a champion means you're committed to a cause, you believe in its purpose, you have the confidence to share it with others, you persistently pursue a vision or a goal, and you have to overcome obstacles. I want to take a quick second and talk about one of my idols, Megan Rapinoe, who you can see here on the picture to the right, with her infamous pose that made her a sensation in the 2019 FIFA World Cup for women. The photo was taken right after they had dominated their opponent. You know, she is a person who's known to be unapologetic for being different, for being herself, and who has had her fair share of trials and tribulations. She took those L's and used them to fuel her and led her to her success. Not only was she a deciding factor in her team's success to be champions, but she continuously is her biggest advocate, and that is what drives her to be her own champion. All right, next slide, please. So we're gonna get into the good stuff here. So I used to think that I was the only person that dealt with the feeling that what I was doing wasn't enough. It took me years to self-reflect and with help of mentors, understand that I was suffering from the imposter syndrome. I was taught to work hard, right, and that it would shine, but through time I realized that I needed to be my own champion. I know I'm not the only person on this call that could relate to this. I'm sure there are many of us here. And in fact, our research indicates that it's very prevalent in Latino culture, and here's why. So first slide, the first statement says, over the 76% of Latinos repress part of their personas at work. This means that 76% of Latinos don't feel comfortable with their appearance, their body language, and their communication style. These are all driving elements that define what leadership in corporate America looks like. We know for a fact that we're underrepresented through many organizations, but that shouldn't deter you from succeeding. Being comfortable being yourself is difficult, to say the least, but knowing who you are and owning it gets you one step closer to not be part of this statistic. The next stat is Latinos with sponsors, senior level advocates are 42% more likely to be satisfied with their career progression than Latinos without sponsors. I am first generation like many of my peers today, and I can tell you this stat really right here, like hit home. Moving away from everything that I knew, I was starting fresh. If I had not found a mentor that truly championed for me and saw me for who I was and saw my potential, I think I would have given up. I mean, I think we've all had that moment of, can I take more? Can I do more? They provided me the guidance that I needed, the advice that I needed at the right time. And it helped me understand that hard work and dedication are critical to success, but so is believing in yourself. It was then that I realized that I was grateful to have a sponsor and I was grateful for them to champion for me, but that I needed to be my own champion. I believe that because of my diversity, I could bring in fresh ideas, innovative ideas, creativity, and more to the table. The last stat that I'll leave you guys with is that more than 53% of Latinas and 44% of Latinos say that their executive presence at their company is defined by conforming to traditionally white male standards. This goes back to being different. No matter where you are in your life right now, you might feel invisible. The truth of the matter is that sometimes you are that one in a million, and adversity is almost a given. Rising above that and pushing through that adversity is what truly means to champion yourself. While I let these stats simmer a little bit, I want to go to the next slide because it's actually time for our next polling question. How comfortable do you feel being yourself in a corporate or academic setting?
Hey, launching the poll. And we are at 20% participants. Please make sure you participate in the poll. We're at 30%. 50%. 70%. And we'll go ahead and close the poll, share the results. And we have 13% are very comfortable, 63% are somewhat comfortable, 19% are neutral, and 6% are not comfortable at all.
That's awesome. Good stats.
Great.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, so thank you all for sharing that with us. And this is Yhanira coming back. What we're gonna do next is jump to the section where we share what we believe are some of the tips and tricks that can help you just from the things that we've experienced. So in their introductions, both Valeria and Marilyn did a good job kind of sharing what they've done while they've been with the company. And I realized that they probably both kind of spent the bulk of their time at USAA. I did have an opportunity to jump around from one industry to another. In my 13 years here, though, I have had at least 10 different jobs and got through a slew of promotions that took me from being a business architect, a process engineer, marketing analyst after my MBA, marketing manager, eventually director, executive director, and now an assistant vice president in the HR department. But what I will tell you is that my story is no different than theirs. After 20 years in a corporate career, I too have had to overcome the feeling like I'm not good enough, or like I have to work twice as hard sometimes to prove myself. And a lot of that is embedded into the culture and upbringing that we have. And some of these tips that I'm going to share with you are things that have like stuck in my mind that I either read or heard somewhere, and that I feel like anytime I share them with others through a panel or a mentor session are the things that tend to like stick to them the most. And while some of you may be taking notes, know that we are making the next 2 slides available for you. Actually, the previous slide and the next 2 slides available for y'all through a handout on this site, so you don't have to worry about writing this down. And here's my favorite quote, and it's kind of called the 3 C's, and I don't know who it's from, but so I will not take credit, but it's, you must make a choice to take a chance or your life will never change. And if you let that kind of sink in a little bit, this is both for your personal and your professional life. If you think about it, if you've been thinking about buying a house, or if you're thinking about getting married or having a kid, like this is the same thing. It applies on the personal front. On the school front or the work front, choosing your career, or choosing to apply for a job within your company or applying to another company, for a lot of those things, it takes courage, which I wish the word courage was in here somewhere, because it's another really big C that unless you are brave and you kind of tend to like lean in, it's not going to happen. And so for some of us, we need a nudge from a friend, a family member, or a mentor to help us get that courage to do things. But by being your own champion, you will do that for yourself. So the kind of path that we're going to guide you through is our 3-step program, or a 3-step process to how you can be an even more effective champion for yourself. First and foremost, you need to know what you want. Otherwise, it's like you're playing darts with blindfolds on, right? So you need to know what you want. You have to have a plan, and it's okay if your plan is flexible, because we know that sometimes things don't always go as planned, right? So Who would have thought that we were going to be spending 6 months working from home, right? A year ago, no one. But yet here we are. And then last but not least is to take action on that plan, because otherwise it's just a checklist and it's not going anywhere. And one of the things that I always suggest to folks is share that plan or that goal with other people, because when you do, then they tend to kind of hold you accountable and ask you about it. So know what you want, have a plan, and take action. In knowing what you want, some things that are good for you to do are to assess what are you good at and enjoy. Because if you get a job or a career or study something, if you're going to graduate school that you're good at and you enjoy, it's going to be a pleasant experience. Otherwise, you may end up in a very long career that might make you very miserable, and that would be good for no one. Next is choose one or two target roles that match that skill set that you're good at. Just because by limiting yourself to one, you may not know. It's almost like taste testing, right? Is try two, why not? You may end up realizing that your second option was actually something that you enjoy more. And then study the roles and responsibilities or the job descriptions or whatever requirements those things have. Because if this is something that you want to do, it's almost like going in to do some research so that you can then build a plan towards arriving there. And for that, I'm going to pause a moment and see if Valeria has anything she wants to add in this section.
Definitely. Thank you, Yhanira. To echo on some of those points, I would say look at what motivates and energizes you. And a lot of times we think that that has to be related to directly to the way you work or what you're doing in school, but we have to remember that we are our whole selves. We bring our whole selves to the workplace, to school, to our family life. So take some time to think about how you're motivated when you're with your family and when you're with your friends. How do you get energized in the day? And sort of taking that time for like introspection and reflection will help you realize, hey, those are maybe some of my strengths, or maybe I can leverage those motivations to find some passions in the workplace. Along those lines, and we'll mention these resources later on, it might be good to investigate some strengths and personality assessments, which are either available for free online or maybe through your schools or workplaces. So those are really good resources to look at. From my own perspective, I would say I knew at the time that I was going to probably do something in supply chain or something like that before I landed the internship with USAA. But after that point, throughout my 10 weeks in the internship, they were really valuable for me because I realized that I wanted to be in a workplace where people, believed in me, and all of my colleagues and my supervisors, they had a lot of faith in me to be able to say, hey, we want you to come back as a full-time developer. So I realized that I didn't necessarily want to have all of the knowledge ahead of time, even though that's what I thought before, but I wanted to know that I was equipped, that I was supported, and I wanted to be in a place where I could grow and my contributions would be valued. And so I'm very thankful that USAA became a place like that for me. So just be sure to recognize those things as well, and that when you do determine something that you believe you want, like Yhanira and we alluded to earlier, it's okay, that those plans change or they flex a little bit. Don't think that that's a failure on your part, because as long as you make the decision with, the best intentions and, as full knowledge as you have at that time, it will be okay, even if it turns out to be different. So handing it back to you, Yhanira.
Thank you. So in the moving on from understanding first what you want to then having a plan, now that you know your target and you do kind of a, what do we call it, like a gaps analysis, right? Is if this is what I need to do to be in that role, and right now these are the things I have, where are those things that I need to invest in? So if it requires training or going back to school on something, or some certifications, or even just volunteering for several types of assignments just to gain the necessary experience. Sometimes at work they may ask for volunteers. Sometimes you can see that there's a problem or some kind of project that if we did it was going to bring value to the organization, and you may be the one that suggests it to your boss and then offer to lead it yourself or drive it yourself, to give you that opportunity to gain that experience. And then I also always recommend, and I happen to be an extrovert, so for me this is very easy. I'm sure we have some introverts on the call right now. Introverts struggle a little more with reaching out to other people, but meet people in those roles to ask them more about it, because you really want to learn it. You know, if you have an opportunity to shadow them or something, that way it's almost like test driving your car before you buy it, right? So that is part of the having the plan, and be flexible with your plan. Do try to set some kind of timelines around your plan, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, because when you don't put time parameters behind it, 4 or 5 years can go by and you look back and regret that you didn't take any action on that sooner. So Valeria, what would you like to add in this section?
Sure. I would say there are two key things that are important to remember when you have your plan. Yhanira just hit on, well, one of them that's a complement to this is to have, that time box for yourself. And what that involves, of course, is, picking something that is reasonable, enough to do within a certain amount of time. And that you at least have a direction to go to in terms of what if you need help or what resources to look into. So basically just making good short-term goals that that you can reasonably reach, and that way that gives you a good sense of making progress. And like we mentioned before, even if you run into something that you didn't expect and it takes longer, that's okay too, because you didn't anticipate it. But in terms of just motivation and feeling good and having that energy to keep going, it's good to pick out some smaller things. So chunk out the big goals, take them and break them down little by little, and see how those will kind of fall into your regular work or school schedule. In addition to that, and this isn't something that I had thought of before until really I started working, having a plan, I think, involves being prepared to be uncomfortable or to not feel certain about what exactly it is that you're doing. And that really all just is part of the learning process. I would say for myself, over the last couple of years, and I mean, to this day, even though I feel a lot more comfortable in my role, there have been a lot of times where, we'll break up our stories of work for the, the 2 weeks iteration. And then I'm like, okay, I think I want to work on this piece of work because I kind of know what's going on. I learned it. But then come to find out, oh, you know what, I need to work on this other piece instead. And I haven't worked with containers and writing Docker files and things like that. Oh my goodness, that's uncomfortable. What if, it's going to take me forever? But I think when you realize that you're going to face those moments, it makes it a lot easier to stay motivated, because that it's just a part of learning. And that's so valuable, because honestly, the satisfaction of having gotten through an assignment that you thought you weren't really going to be good at, or that it was going to be too dense or too complex for you to understand, that just proves to you that you have such a great capacity to learn. So remember that too. Be prepared to be uncomfortable, and you're going to do more than you expected.
Valeria, I love that you went there, because you reminded me of another favorite quote, and that is that there is no growth in the comfort zone. So if you want to grow, you got to get in your uncomfortable zone. So thank you for sharing that. Here's a little one to make us uncomfortable, just going into the take action. That's ask for help. A lot of us growing up, our parents just tell you, figure it out, you can do it. So we're not really good at asking for help sometimes. So we kind of broke down the help acronym for you there, because that kind of sometimes helps us remember things. But first and foremost, if you want something, you have to have the courage to, for example, if it's a role, to post and compete. If it's something educational, you have to apply. If you don't take that action of asking for it, it's almost like signing the dotted line, then the rest of it doesn't even start. You'll never even get interviewed. You have to first, say you want it, and then the interview process starts. And so along the way, in each of these next steps, there is an opportunity to ask for help. So first, have the courage. In engaging others for support, you can ask them to review your resume, give you feedback on it. One of the big tips that I usually give on resumes is, if you're reading through it and all you see is words and there are no numbers, and I know I'm on this call with a bunch of engineers, so I'm sure most of you guys do have numbers in your resume, quantifying the impact of the work that you did in those roles that you were in makes a big difference. So try to tie in the impact of the work and the outcomes of the achievements through some kind of number. But that's just one of the tips for engaging someone on resume writing. Next is the going back to the imposter syndrome, and that how sometimes we're our own worst critic. Learn to see the best in yourself. And one of the the Strengths Finders assessment, which now has a new name, and we're going to give you a link to it, will help you assess what are those you know, 2 or 3 big things that you do really well, and then make sure that when you're selling yourself through an interview or through a job application or something, that you highlight those great things. And I'm one person who does not like to use the word weakness. I prefer to call them opportunities. So every one of us is a work in progress. But as you are a work in progress, talk about your gaps, right? Talk about your opportunities. Because I'm sure that if you're here right now and you're spending this hour with us, is because you want to get better and you have learning agility. So so see yourself as good and being enough. I literally ordered this ring that says I am enough just a couple of months ago, because with the whole COVID situation and struggling at home, I was questioning whether I was going to be able to do this. 1-year-old at home, teenager going to school. My husband's also working from home. He's also a USAA employee, and I'm an executive of a pretty sizable team. Working nights and weekends sometimes, it was getting a little hectic, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to hack it. But through support and help and talking, I got to remind myself about the I am enough. So the last one here is practice interviewing. And I know that the SHPE conference is around the corner, and this, knowing who our audience is, right? I think maybe half of us are in either undergraduate or graduate studies right now, and the other half are already in the workplace. I love to meet with others and give them feedback on their interviews, or when I'm interviewing, asking for someone to help prepare me. I always recommend ask a friend or a coworker that's going to be honest with you, because you don't want someone who's just gonna, you know, pepper you with a couple of questions and then you're going to give them answers, and at the end they're going to say like, oh no, you're good, you're right, go ahead, go on, you're ready. You want someone that's going to be critical and that's going to tell you, right, you either went too long on this, or you talked for a while but I didn't really hear you answer the question, right? That honesty is what's really going to help you focus on the areas where you can do better, so that when you do show up for an interview, you won't be so nervous. And one of the things that I see a lot in interviews, and this is both women and men of color. And when I say men of color, I mean Latinos, African Americans. We tend to show up a lot of times to interviews coming across like we lack confidence. And for me, it's usually not that the person is not capable or is not, doesn't have the qualifications for the role. It's just that I think we've been conditioned to almost feel like we can't be comfortable in our own skin sometimes, and it makes us more nervous. So that's hard to overcome, but try to pump yourself up and believe that you are the best candidate for the job. Before you finish your interview, let them know that that is what you want to do. Tell them you already have plans for the first 30, 60, 90 days, right? If you got the role and you got the opportunity. And I know that this one slide and these tips and tricks that we're sharing with you today are not the end all be all, but this will at least help you to walk out from this conversation today, and as you go to bed tonight, and reflect on what are some of these choices that I need to choose to take a chance and make a change in my life, right? And I'm sure some of you are probably like, this is hitting you and you're thinking, did God send me this message today? You're here for a reason. And lastly, one of the things that I want to share, because the asking for help, it's coworkers, it could be family members, it could be friends. A lot of times we think that, and the stat was shared earlier, right, that the corporate world is dominated or at least led by white men. When you look at the C-suite and you look at who our CEOs are, like that's who you see. The help doesn't always have to come from someone who looks like you. I do a lot of mentoring, but sometimes because there aren't a lot of Latinos in my organization that are at levels above me, I have mentors who are white men. I have mentors who are white women, you know, they still want to help me. And there was a stat that Marilyn showed. It's those Latinos who are not afraid to ask for help, who then get more targeted advice on the things to do to progress and then get better. So don't be afraid of doing that. And then the last thing I'll share is that one of the things I really liked to do growing up while I was at MIT is in the asking for help. I literally, every time I had a test or if I had an interview, I'd call my mom and I'd be like, Mommy, please, prende una vela, which for those of you who don't speak Spanish is light up a religious candle, right? Whatever your thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help. And with that, I am going to transition it to Valeria to talk to you about the tools and the resources that are going to be available for y'all in this handout.
Great, thank you, Yhanira. So here we have just a few highlights of some good resources that we'd like to share with you all tonight. On the left-hand side, you'll see some articles. A couple of them are from the Harvard Business Review. One is from Indeed.com, and the last one is actually a website called Skills You Need. So just going in order there, 10 career development goals. It's pretty simple. You know, you might think I've seen this before, and you probably have. There's lots of list articles like this out there, but just going through it, I found that it had a really good summary of, you know, things that you can consider, and maybe you can take one of those 10 goals, or maybe 2 or 3 if you want, and make them relevant to you and see how can I implement these in the next years of my academic career, or here as I'm entering my professional career. The next 2 are from Harvard Business Review, and I gotta say that journal in general is just wonderful to find a lot of other types of content in terms of professional development. So if you have a chance to get access to that journal through your school, or maybe a personal subscription, it'd be a great resource to look at. So the 2 key themes of those articles are, 1, surrounding yourself with people who will push you. And I think we've alluded to a lot of this in tonight's presentation, because the people that are around you are going to make a really big difference in how well and how confident you feel in becoming that champion for yourself. And then eventually you will become that champion for others too, and hopefully be, you know, serving others as you help them and push them to grow into their own. And then of course we have How to Be Brave, you know, in Uncertain Times. This is an interview with Unilever's chief HR officer, and so she gives some advice on her perspectives of what employment looks like now, what people entering careers might be thinking about, and what they're experiencing just in light of the COVID pandemic, and all of those shifts that we had. So it's a brief but really good read, and hopefully you'll find other interviews similar to that either on HBR or other sites. On the left-hand side, we have some of those assessments and some media as well. So I mentioned the personality tests. One of them is the Clifton Strengths, and this was formerly known as StrengthsFinder. Often I found that universities or colleges offer this through their career development centers, and so I'd recommend reaching out to your career planning and career development staff at campus to see if they have a way that you can take the exam. There's also the book that you can check out as well from your local library, or purchase it if you would like, but this helps you focus in on, you know, the 5 key strengths, and there are trained coaches out there as well that can help you look at what those strengths mean for you and how they can help you get where you want to go. The next one is a Myers-Briggs personality test. So a lot of you may be familiar with it already. That's, you know, the INFJ, INFP, all of those. There's 16 different personalities in total. This one is actually free and online. And once you take the assessment, I think it's about a series of maybe 10 sections of 10 or so questions each. It'll give you a nice little, you know, profile of what your stronger personality type looks like. So it does go into what that looks like for your professional life, and it mentions, of course, you know, personal and career, family, and things like that as well. One thing I do want to highlight though with the strengths and personality assessments is that remember that these aren't a box. These are just, you know, a best, I guess you could say a best inference and best collection of, you know, what things stood out to you based on how these assessments are built. So do give them some stock, because I think when I've taken like Myers-Briggs, I found a lot of things that I thought that's really interesting. I do actually relate to that, but don't let that make you feel that that's what you are and you'll always like stay that way. There's always room for growth and change, and it'll often, you know, develop as you go on. You'll find that you switch from one personality type to another. Last but not least, we have 2 key media resources. One is a podcast called Pathways to Success, and this is led by a career speaker and a professional called Julian Placino. So he does a lot of interviews with people from all different industries, and I found his podcast to be pretty engaging. I listened to a couple of them, and hopefully you'll find other podcasts if maybe his style isn't your preferred. Maybe look at some that you can listen to when you're, you know, driving to maybe get groceries or doing a family road trip for the holidays, because I know there's probably not a lot of travel going on right now. And then of course the SHIP webinar latinXfactor playlist on YouTube. So be sure to check out the previous webinars if you haven't seen them before, or if you've seen them and want to refresh on some of the great presentations that have been hosted here. So with that, I think we'll now move to our final poll question. With everything that we shared, how do you believe that you can be your own champion?
Okay, so the poll is launched. And Valeria, thank you so much for the shout out for the other SHIP webinars, the latinXfactor webinars. Appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Okay, so we're at 25% who have voted. %, 70%. And we'll go ahead and close the poll and share the results. And we have 22% say that I am already my own champion. 78% say that I now understand it and will work on it. And then 0% for the last two.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for y'all's input and participation in the poll question. We are officially complete with our slide deck, so we are open to taking any questions, and we'll definitely do the best we can to answer them.
Okay, so the first question comes from Alfredo Castillo, and he is asking about your internship program and scholarship program that you mentioned earlier in the presentation.
I can talk a little bit about maybe not necessarily the internship program. I actually came in as a full-time hire. I had interned with other companies prior to that. I had interned with the Coast Guard and Northrop Grumman back in Virginia a long time ago. But that really helped me find what I was really passionate about, and it led me to USAA. I will say USAA has a great educational program that allows people to pursue further education, and it really spans from certifications, degrees, masters. I did my master's with them, and they actually paid for that, and I was very happy to do it. And so you have options in terms of that. And I think, Valeria, you were an intern, right?
Yes, I was. So I was an intern in 2017, and the way that the internships work is you come in with a big cohort of IT interns, and there's other interns in other departments, but for IT, you get embedded with a team, and you work with that team for roughly 9.5 to 10 weeks. So that's a really good experience because you get a sense of what it's like to work day to day in an IT team at USAA. And so you get exposure to all the different meetings that go on in terms of planning and design. And most importantly, you do get to get hands-on and work on real work that your team is doing. I'm happy to say too that we did continue to offer internships over the summer. So we had a good cohort of interns. I don't remember the number over 2020. They were all virtual. And I got to work with one as sort of an intern mentor. And she, let me tell you, she learned so much. She learned a lot of backend development, doing APIs. And she got to do front-end development as well to build a UI to interact with her backend API. There's also, in between all of that, there's special intern events where you'll hear from, IT executives and other career speakers that can give you ideas of different IT careers at USAA. And there's a few, I believe, social and volunteering events, which are a little different during these COVID times, but ordinarily you all get together and spend some time getting to know each other. So they're really wonderful. And if you all are considering applying to an internship, I'd recommend you stop by our booth at the SHPE conference coming up soon.
Okay. So we have Omar Torres who wants to know, are you hiring for any other positions besides internships?
The best place would be to go to USAA Careers. There's always tons of openings out there. And as the ladies were answering your question around internships, I was thinking is that, we have a lot of engineers on the phone. If you're doing computer science, like I mentioned, process engineering, maybe even industrial engineering, there definitely are careers for you at USAA. Something like mechanical engineering or petroleum engineering, things like that would probably not work. So with that, I'll just take a minute to explain who USAA is and what we do so that you can kind of get a grasp of it. It's a financial services organization that's headquartered out of San Antonio. We are a membership-based organization, so not just anyone could join. It's got 13 million members, roughly around 13 million members, and it is these financial services are offered to either active duty military veterans or their families. So we have a bank, we have insurance, we have life insurance, property insurance, car insurance, and I think we used to do investments, but anything that's kind of a corporate job in those areas, finance, HR, marketing, definitely hiring. On the techie side, you're looking probably at IT jobs.
Okay. All right, so we have Sandra de la Torre, and she's wanting to know, what advice would you recommend for recent graduates?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I would say, it's a hard transition from university to a corporate job, or any job for that matter. I actually, while I was going to school for my undergrad, I was actually working full time. It was a difficult time in my life where I had to juggle and I had to still, perform and make sure that my grades weren't dropping. And I think the most valuable information that I actually found from going to school is that I learned how to learn. I don't know if that makes sense. You spend your whole life, being graded on, are you doing enough, or, are you studying enough? Do you understand the material? But that really sets you up when you're in corporate America. You have to essentially learn to adapt. You're going to have to learn to essentially learn, and you're going to have to be able to network, make connections, and like, Yhanira mentioned, ask for help when you do need that. And so you're in a process when you're doing that transition, you're really, really hard on yourself. I suffered severely with imposter syndrome early on, because I thought I was on this island. I was away from my familia. It was a difficult time for me, and it took me some time to realize, hey, I can do this. My family is still supporting me. My mom is still lighting la candela, from afar. But, I needed to realize that I could do it. And I think the biggest advice that I can give you from that transition is not to persevere, to know your limits, to know your weaknesses, and really structure your plan, to Yhanira and Valeria's point, to what you want to become, and essentially never forget what that goal is.
And please, please, please don't talk yourself out of applying for something because you may think you don't meet the qualifications. I always say, let them tell you no. Don't tell yourself no yourself by not even trying. So if you're a recent graduate and you're looking for a full-time job, I would also say, given the current market conditions that we're in, be open to something that is maybe a temporary job and not a permanent job, because it'll at least get your foot in the door. At USAA, we hire thousands of contractors who come in on 6 or 12-month assignments, and we almost call it try it before you buy it. That gives us an opportunity. Maybe out of 10 contractors, we end up hiring 1 or 2 full-time, but we then see their work style, their personalities, and if they're going to be a good combination for our culture, and if they're going to, to be a good member of the team permanently as a full-time hire. So just kind of be flexible. If they're offering you an internship and not a full-time position, be flexible with that. Also, while it may be scary to move from where you currently live, don't be afraid to spread your wings. Some of you maybe had to relocate for college. Some of you maybe haven't had to move around. Sometimes things just come full circle. I remember doing my 4 years in Boston, 4 years in California, 2 years in Houston, and 10 years later, I was back in San Antonio, as close to home as I could get. But time flies, and so don't be afraid.
I would add to that a couple of things. One, just as you mentioned, and I'm glad you did, Yhanira, if you do find yourself where you have to, look for something temporary that's maybe not ideally where you'd want to be, but it's, it's a good in-between, or at least a good compromise. Really value and cherish that time in terms of, make it the best learning experience that you possibly can, because kind of what I like to compare it to is like, even if somebody knows that they want to be like maybe a doctor in the long term, right? Well, maybe they didn't have the ability to get into medical school right away, but in the meantime, they're doing a research job or something else. So when you put your 100% into that, so being the best scientist you could be, or maybe being the best, whatever it is, the experiences that you gain from that are going to be invaluable, and nobody can take that away from you. So just don't forget that, whether it's, you know, the academic degree that you're just completing and you end up doing something different, or a temporary job that you do and then you do something different, that does not invalidate that time. On the contrary, it's so much more valuable because it makes you diverse and it helps you bring a lot of creative perspectives.
Next question, Dora.
Okay, the next one comes from Alfredo Castillo, and he's asking, where he's saying, you talked about practicing for interviews. Do you have any resources one can use to practice, and not only for behavioral interviews, but for coding and technical interviews?
I'll answer the non-technical one because I've been out of the IT world for about 10 years or a little longer. But on the other ones, on the tips and tricks, you know, personally, I've created a list of things that I recommend to folks, and eventually, after I found myself like repeating it over and over again, I typed them up. So if you friend me through LinkedIn or add me through LinkedIn and shoot me your email address, I'd be happy to share that with you. I'm sure you could Google resources that have things that you can do to prepare for the interview itself. But my best advice is to try to gauge from your company, because every company does interviews differently, what are the types of questions that they ask, and then have someone test you on those. And I'm not one who practices in front of the mirror, so I'm not going to record, but you may want to. I actually did this with my husband a couple of months ago. I told him, record yourself, because that way when you record yourself answering the questions, you can play it back, and then you can hear yourself, and you can see what it is, not that I like or I don't like about it, but what you like or you don't like about it, right? So those are just some of my my recommendations.
Yeah, I think for the technical side, that's also a very, very hard thing to really study for. It really just depends on the position that you're applying for. So assuming I'm applying as a software developer and I know that it's primarily front-end development, I'm expected to understand JavaScript, right? I'm expected to understand how to troubleshoot, what opportunities there are for testing, for functional testing, unit testing, front-end testing. What are the standards, you know, the industry standards, right, that are out there that you can, you know, can hone in. And so when you come from that perspective, I think if you're coming in as an entry level, you know, what you're supposed to essentially showcase is that you're able to understand the generic, or essentially understand that language. And so the best recommendation I can give you is to make sure you understand what it is you're really trying to develop in. And if it's in Java, same kind of thing applies. They're going to ask you questions that are, if you say you're a Java developer, then prove it. Show me what you know from Java. You know, what is a string? What is an object, etc. These are things that'll make you more prepared. There are tons of articles out there that kind of give you a guide that you can kind of say, okay, this is probably interesting. This is probably something I should look into. You know, but from an entry level, many opportunities are there. You know, the idea that you're able to discuss and have conversations around something that you're passionate about is probably one of the leading indicators that you'll have in any interview, because it showcases that you really like what you're talking about. And the other thing that I think is also important is essentially, you know, you need to be comfortable in your skin, right? You need to be able to showcase that. I will say that I have not heard of one company that does not have some type of methodology. So you're going to have companies that follow a waterfall approach. If you don't know what that means, look that up. Essentially, it's the way that, you know, work comes in, flows through companies, and business requirements are gathered. So that's, you know, one methodology. You also have Safe Agile. If you guys don't know what that is, I'd look that up as well. These are tools that you may not be necessarily exposed to in college, but I can guarantee you every company uses a form of that to manage the work. So I think that'll help you kind of get a sense of what you're trying to overcome here.
Yeah,
Valeria, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
And if I could share real quickly, the secret formula for the behavioral questions is situation, behavior, outcome. Typically you get asked, give me an example of, you know, or tell me about a time that you did X. is explain the situation, like be brief, just give details of like this was the project or this was the situation. Behavior meaning what did you do, like what was your role in it, and then going back to like numbers and impact, right, is what was the outcome of that project, work, initiative, whatever it was. So tell them about it, what did you do, and then what happened as a result of it. And Dora, I know we're almost at time. I don't know if there are any other questions in there. I'd be happy to stay on and share a little bit more if we need to. I'll let you gauge us.
I just want to wrap up the show with each one of you sharing some final thoughts as we move into convention, as we wrap up this program. Any advice for our participants?
Ladies, either one of you want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead, Valeria.
Sure, thank you, Marilyn. Well, as you approach the convention, hopefully we'll see you all there. But even if you don't, if you're going to other career fairs and things like that, my most important advice to you, I would say, is just remember to be authentic. And, you know, like Marilyn said earlier, be comfortable in your own skin. That doesn't mean that, you know, you think that you know everything, or, you know, you realize that you don't know all of the details that you want to know. But what it does mean is that, as we mentioned earlier, you celebrate your strengths. You recognize that you are a really talented and really capable individual. So I would say when you go into interviews or even just networking sessions and things like that, with that mentality, it's going to make those interactions so much more enriching, and you'll really stand out to people that are recruiting, because they'll be able to tell very quickly, you know, if somebody's trying to be the person that they think the company wants them to be, versus saying, hey, this is who I am. I really am interested in what you're doing. These are my passions. Can we make this work? So remember that being authentic is going to be key for these processes or these experiences coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add one thing, and I keep thinking about it, is in no matter what role you're in, whether you're still an undergraduate or a graduate, or you're going into corporate America, or you're finding a new job, just be flexible. You know, the world's not always going to work the way you want it to. Your plan's not always going to happen the way you want it to. So being flexible and still overcoming those obstacles that are coming your way is the best advice I can give you. And I know it's harder to say than to, well, it's harder to do than to say, but we're hoping that this presentation really helped you guys kind of hone the steps that you can take to try to overcome that.
Okay, and before dropping off, I did want to share with you all that if you go to the handout section of your webinar tool, this is the PDF that we created for you, and it has the definition of how to be your own champion, and then the tips and tricks on how to do it, right? The making a choice to take a chance and your life will never change. And then lastly, the links to the tools themselves. And I'm one who likes to do quotes. You probably already picked up on that. So one that I'm going to share for you, and it's from Sheryl Sandberg, and it says, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just get on, right? Remember, that takes courage. And then this one, I don't know who the quote is from, but it says, stop being afraid of what can go wrong and start being positive and excited about what can go right. So just believe in yourself. I've had too many obstacles in my career that kind of shook me down and made me question. And I always keep going back to the fact that God made us all the same. I don't care what kind of title you have or how much money you have in your bank account or how fancy your car is. You're not going to be any more special than I am. Like, we are all equally special. And so believe that you are enough. And thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate having the opportunity to spend this time with you.
Okay, well, there you go, Ship Familia. Join me in thanking our USAA partners, Yhanira, Valeria, Marilyn, bravissimo. We appreciate you all for sharing such valuable knowledge with us. We greatly appreciate our partnership with USAA. Again, this is our last show for the year, right before convention. We will start up again with a program in January for a great show with new objectives and an enhanced new transformation. Ship Familia, please remember to take our survey. You will receive a thank you email with the survey link right after the webinar. And the last reminder that this recording, along with all the others. It's found not only on ship.org, but also on YouTube on the Ship National channel. So signing off from Ship National, buenas noches, stay safe and well, and we will see you at the National Convention.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.